This is SportsCenter at the Indianapolis 500.
20 years ago at Indy, there was a spin.
Side by side, Sullivan has the lead. Danny Sullivan. Oh, no!
The driver who would spin went on to win.
The new American hero is Daniel John Sullivan III of Louisville, Kentucky, who has won the Indianapolis 500.
The move was smooth, but so was the guy behind the wheel. A charmer and a champion as a racer. He's still in the sport today, searching for the next great racing talent. SportsCenter at the Indianapolis 500 takes a look back and a look ahead with one of the most memorable names in racing history, Danny Sullivan. We welcome you to our SportsCenter coverage from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where the 89th running of the Indianapolis 500 is now less than a week away. And it is truly a pleasure to be joined by the 1985 winner of the Indy 500, Danny Sullivan. And Danny, welcome back to Indianapolis.
Thanks. It's great to be here. You know, I'm just watching that tape, and I still get chills when I see that spin. It's still amazing for me.
Now, when you drive through this tunnel, coming to the track for the first time, and you see this place, what are your thoughts?
Well, there's a lot of fond memories here. This was a very tough month for most of the drivers, for everybody that comes here, because you wake up in the morning, can I be faster? Can I get that extra mile an hour? But to win it, to be a champion here, come in, see the yellow shirts, see everything. I stayed at the old Speedway Motel last night, the Brickyard Crossing. Just fond memories.
You know, how special is this place? I mean, to all race drivers, including those fortunate enough like you to win this race, but to everybody who gets in a car and drives sometime, how special is this racetrack?
You know, I'm not really so sure you can describe it. For one, to win it is beyond belief, but to come here to compete in it, to qualify, to race against some of the best names in the industry, Indianapolis is truly a special place.
Well, if you ask any open-wheel fan to rank their top 5 Indy moments, they invariably will include 1985 at or near the top. Let's look back at the special day for Danny Sullivan on this, the 20th anniversary of the spin and win.
I have never seen a person take a spin like that.
When he arrived in early May, he brought with him his own idea for winning the 1985 Indianapolis 500.
Starting position here at the Indianapolis race is not that critical. This is a 500-mile race, and really the first 400 miles is just getting yourself into position.
And that lead is dwindling by the second.
Running with Mario, especially close for a victory, you better do it right, and you better be committed when you make your pass, and because he's not going to give you any quarter.
Side by side, Sullivan has the lead. Danny Sullivan. Oh, no!
I get the feeling watching that it was absolute instinct, and it was survival, and he knew.
Losing control of the car.
He doesn't even know how he did it, and it's just a driver's reflex, and he got it.
I was just holding on.
You know, how do you get to this point where you can just go out there and you can grab that car and, oh, I spun, but I didn't hit anything, so I'm going to keep going, and then you win the race. I mean, how great is that?
Never seen a 360 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway where the driver kept it away from the wall like that. Just uncanny. A few laps later, here comes Sullivan again. And uh-oh, you know, he's going to try that again. Same spot.
Yep, here he comes. Yep. Danny Sullivan side by side with Mario Andretti, and he does not get caught up this time. Yeah. And he does not spin. The new American hero is Daniel John Sullivan III of Louisville, Kentucky, who has won the Indianapolis 500.
I enjoy winning, but I enjoy winning, fighting hard, and beating guys like Mario and that, because you know, they could have turned around the other way, and it was a great race, and we had to fight the whole afternoon, especially after the spin.
Some of the greatest names today in IndyCar marveling at what you accomplished on that day some 20 years ago. Now, Danny, what do you remember most about the spin itself?
Well, I can't repeat what I thought when on air, but really the thing was I was so frustrated because I'd just gotten into the lead of the Indianapolis 500 and I'd thrown it away. It was gone, and I was more angry. But then it all turned around. I was facing the turn 2 sweeps, took my foot off the brake, and went on. And you know, really at that stage I had to put it all behind me because I still had a whole bunch of laps to go and try to get back up and see if I could pass Mario again.
Now, honestly, eyes open or closed while you were spinning?
Oh, I had my eyes open, but I was not very, and I really believed that I was going to hit the wall. I didn't think that there, you know, like Tom Carnagie said and everybody else, it was luck to keep it off the wall. That wasn't skill.
Now, after you spun, how did you regain your composure? I mean, was there some kind of calming voice on the radio or something that helped you refocus?
Well, Derek Walker, who was always on the radio with me, I mean, Derek really said, okay, you know, it's past, let's go. We had to make a pit stop, change the tires, get back out, the yellow, okay, let's go. That's past history. We'll deal with that later on. And really, the minute the green flag dropped after that yellow, you're back racing. You had to focus on getting back to the front.
You passed Mario Andretti at exactly the same spot where you had spun the race car, looped at 360. That took some courage.
Well, it sounds like it was pretty courageous, but to be honest with you, my car was quicker off of 3 and 4 than it was off of 1 and 2, and so that's where I had more speed and I had a better draft on him, was down into 1. So the spot really kind of was dictated by what the car was doing.
Today, when you talk to Mario Andretti, he still marvels at the fact of what you accomplished. You spun the race car, and he essentially all race had the car to beat. I mean, it was one of the strongest cars. And for you to come back and do what you did, he says, where did this guy come from? I mean, that was pretty impressive.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize, too, is Derek Walker had made a fabulous call during the race. At one stage, I was 4.5 seconds from being lapped by Mario early on, and Derek made a pit stop and took me out a step of everybody to get the car right. And once we had the car right, yeah, Mario had a fantastic car, but mine was a little bit better.
Obviously it was, because you won the race. Now, immediately after winning the race, how soon did you realize that that day would change your life forever?
To be honest with you, it was about 6 weeks after that, and you know, because you get swept up in everything from the morning talk shows to this thing to what Miller had for us to what Penske organized for us, for everybody, you know, and you're on this treadmill, you're just going and going. And I remember standing in the shower at the hotel at the Michigan for the Michigan 500, and I went, damn, you know, I won the Indianapolis 500. That's really cool.
Not only did you become an Indy 500 winner, you became the darling of Hollywood. I mean, you're on all the talk shows, and no star on the Walk of Fame could compare to the way you were shining right then. Tell us about some of those special memories of going to Hollywood and becoming a superstar there on the West Coast.
Well, I lived out on the West Coast at that time anyway, and so I knew a lot of the people, and I had a publicist, and I'd met a lot of the people out there, and they, after I won it, they said, hey, this is really cool, and next thing you know, there's a party for this, a party for that, and there you go. But I think the publicity looked pretty good, but there was a lot of work still to be done.
How much of your life didn't belong to you anymore? When you won the Indy 500, suddenly you went from being a guy who could walk around here like you and I would exercise in the morning, go to the gym. Suddenly you couldn't go anywhere without suddenly being Elvis in public.
Well, that's true, but you know, it's also a little bit what you strive for, not so much the notoriety, but you're striving for success, and with the success comes the notoriety. And I had a pretty good taskmaster in Roger Penske. He kind of kept everybody in check and kept you grounded somewhat. But to the same extent, it's very important for the sponsors and for everybody that you're doing those appearances, you're making the publicity for them. So it's part of the job.
Well, 3 years later, this Indy winner also added the title of champion to his resume. Then in 1989, he literally suffered through a tough break early on here in the month of May at Indianapolis. More with Danny Sullivan when we come back to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
SportsCenter at the Indianapolis 500 is brought to you by Corona Extra, miles away from ordinary.
He's on the straightaway. He raised his hand. The checkered flag is out. Danny Sullivan wins the Budweiser Cleveland Grand Prix, his second consecutive IndyCar victory.
I owe a lot of that to my crew, if not all of it, because they first built the car, and then they got me ahead in the pit stops, and they kept me there. Even though we had to do a little stop and go, they said they just weren't sure. And but they got me out there, and I owe it all to those guys, because they put me out there and week after week. Thank you. Woo!
Well, Well, that was Danny winning at Cleveland back in 1986. Now, Danny, in 1988, you would go out and win 4 more races on your way to winning the kart championship. How special was it for you to bring a title to Team Penske?
Well, I think, first of all, personally, it was very important to have a championship under my belt. I'd won races, but not a championship. That was important. Penske hadn't had a championship in a long time. That was important. It was great for all the crew. We had suffered the years prior to that with 2 cars that weren't very competitive. Now we got a car, and we had 4 wins, but we also had 9 or 10 poles that year. And I just think it showed how competitive we were, and it was great to have a championship.
Following your championship, you returned here to Indy in '89, but that month of May wasn't very kind to you. Tell us about literally the tough break you sustained early in the month.
Well, what happened was just in practice, I went out and had a bodywork failure on the car going into turn 3 and spun around and went up, and I think I went up and hit the fence anyway. Don't remember much of it, and broke my right forearm. But Dr. Trammell and his boys down there to work their magic, and believe it or not, 6 days later I came back out and got back in the car.
You look at Terry Trammell there trying to repair that arm, and he basically is the guru. He's the that puts all the Humpty Dumpty's guys back together again here in IndyCar racing. And he opened your arm, put in a steel plate and screws. And I remember for the ABC telecast, I'm standing with you on pit road to talk about your plate in the arm for that day. And the one thing you said was, I'm not sure how I can handle the vibration of the race car and the pain with those screws holding your arm together. How was it?
Well, believe it or not, unfortunately, my race here didn't last that long, and we had a clutch failure or something like that. And it was okay, but and at Milwaukee it was okay, but when I got to Detroit, the street race, the arm started to come apart and separate even with the plate in there. And Dr. Trammell said, you know, you're going to have to take some time off. That was a big blow.
Yeah, you take a look at you having to leave here after 41 laps in 1989, and obviously the more vibration you have on a fracture, the more time it's going to take to heal, so you had to take some time off. Now, in 1990, you posted 2 more wins for Team Penske, but following that season, you and Roger Penske decided to part ways. Why leave?
Well, at that time, he had a 3-car team with Emerson, Rick, myself. And it had been a struggle that, that year, but then he lost the Pennzoil sponsorship. Rick wasn't going anywhere, and Emerson was tied with Marlboro. So unfortunately, I had kind of the short stick, but I also don't think it was going to be very productive as a 3-car team. So it was a chance to move on, and good or bad, look back on it, who knows, but the timing was right, and we parted ways friends, and I went on and drove for some other teams.
When you talk to Roger Penske today and you ask him, just say the words Danny Sullivan, a big smile comes to Roger's face. He remembers those great memories, and everyone loved having you as part of the team, and I'm sure your memories of Roger are very similar.
Oh, very much so. Here this guy, total professional, was a great racer himself, so he knows what it takes, but he puts together an operation that's second to none. Everybody wants to drive for him, mainly because, particularly at that time, because of his record here at the Brickyard. You know, you want to be here. If you want to win the Indianapolis 500, you go drive for Roger Penske. You got the best chance.
Obviously, that's what brought Sam Hornish to Penske. He won 2 titles in a different team with Panther. Now drives for Roger because he wants to win this race here so badly. You know, after leaving Team Penske, you had 1 disappointing season with Patrick Racing before joining forces with Rick Gallis. Now, under Gallis's, you won 2 races. Your final win coming here at Detroit in 1993. For someone who experienced great success with Penske, how trying was it in the early 90s for Danny Sullivan not to be successful?
Well, to take those 2 teams, I mean, Patrick with Jim McGee and all that was an excellent team. They were very well run, but they were suffering with the Alfa Romeo engine. So that was the first year. That went away. I joined Rick Gallis, but unfortunately, Gallis's team was really Al Unser Jr.'s team. And we were sort of really second tier. That didn't happen at Penske. At Penske, everybody got the same equipment, everything. At Gallis, it was a little bit different, so it was a struggle over there. And they were going through the problems with little Al, leaving, not leaving, which he ultimately did. So unfortunately, wasn't what I expected. But that happens in racing.
Indeed it does. When we return with Danny Sullivan, we'll see how this wreck at Michigan ultimately led to Danny's decision to retire. SportsCenter from the Indianapolis 500 returns after this.
It has been a great run. It was a tremendous time. Many thanks to all the teams that I drove for, particularly Penske Racing for the win in '85 and the championship, and everybody that supported me through those years. Everybody's been great. I can't thank all of you, but this whole group, from everybody from the safety workers to the crews, to the medical crews, which I experienced too many times, to everybody, my competitors, my friends, it's been fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Those were the heartfelt words spoken by Danny Sullivan at the 1996 CART banquet. And Danny, it's never easy for a driver to walk away from something he loves so much. And how much did that wreck at Michigan we just saw a moment ago the year before lead to your decision to call it quits?
Well, obviously it was a big factor, you know, when you've been in the hospital and you had to do the recuperation, all of that sort of stuff. But the real fact for me was that at that time, the team that I was with, I didn't feel was competitive enough for the next season. I didn't like some of the changes they'd made, and I didn't want to be in a situation just driving around struggling like I had been. If it had been, you know, Ganassi or Penske or something like that, then I might have looked at it differently. But at that time, that didn't look like a bright future.
Well, for the folks who may want to know, these days, Danny still has his hands in racing, so we're going to find out exactly what you're doing. Now, you're still very, very involved in traveling around, being involved in the sport. What are you doing?
Well, I'm the director of a program, the Red Bull Driver Search Program, that I talked a lot with Red Bull about doing, and they went for it, and that was to develop the next American Formula One driver and hopefully champion. And we find the kids here and through go-karting and scouting and in different formulas, and we run them through different events, and then we get them with our judges, and we run them through about 3 months worth of events over different places. But what we're trying to do is take the talent to Europe, develop it, let them develop their skills and their talent in the European arena, and hopefully become a Formula One driver. And we've got a couple of bright kids. Scott Speed has won 2 championships last year, and he's leading the GP2 championship at the moment. Colin Fleming, and then we've got even a young 14-year-old kid over there, John Edwards, who's racing go-karts for CRG, and then a young kid on the West Coast, Cole Witt, who's driving in go-karts as well, and lots of other things, and hopefully we're going to find them. And if it wasn't for Red Bull, this program wouldn't be in place.
You mentioned Scott Speed and Colin and some of the guys. Is there the next American Formula One star waiting in the wings? I mean, you've seen them all.
I believe that, you know, there's obviously steps that they still have to take, but I believe that Scott Speed, he tested at Barcelona in a Formula One car. He was the quickest of all the people there. He's got the talent if he can just get the, you know, the break, and that comes as with everybody. Colin Fleming is right behind him, and we've got great talent, as I said, in John Edwards. So it's there. We've got the talent in America. It's just giving them the right opportunity, and Red Bull's trying to do that.
We know you're going to be at Monaco in a few weeks, and you're on the west coast of this country. You're in Florida. You're on the south of France. How much travel is involved in this Red Bull program, this search for the young drivers?
Well, in the last 2 years, I've done about 600,000 air miles.
Wow.
And, you know, because not only do we have the kids running in Europe and you want to see what they're doing and so forth and talking with the judges and going to different races, but you got to find the ones here. And we just finished our open qualifying at 60 indoor karting centers around the country. Now we do 2 big outdoor events. I'm at those. Then we take them to the Barber Dodge cars down in Sebring where our judges are. And then we go to Portugal in October and put them in championship Formula 3 cars. So there's a lot of work, a lot of travel, but it's very, very rewarding. These kids are great. We've got so much talent here in the United States, and without Red Bull and giving them the opportunity to develop that talent is just tremendous. Very, very rewarding.
So you're looking for Formula One stars of the future, but let's talk a little bit about IndyCar. I mean, of the drivers, of the young guys you see here in the IRL IndyCar Series, you know, who's the driver? Who's the young guy, the driver to watch, or girl, in the next few years?
Well, I don't follow the series as close as I probably should. A lot of them are going in and out, but you know, from you know, obviously Danica Patrick's doing a great job, and that's a big story, not just because she's young and a rookie at this, but also because she's a female, but she's stepping up and putting the numbers up, and she's driving the car very well. But Scott Speed went down and tested the Cheever Red Bull car and was very impressive there. I think what our program does, which is very important, it gives them a basis. It gives them a lot of development time in Europe, very intense over there. And I think even if they don't make it in Formula One, they've got the ability and they've developed a lot of those skills to come back here and potentially race right here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
With Red Bull's involvement in Cheever racing, could possibly one of the people you find get a chance to get in one of the Eddie Cheever's cars, maybe run some open wheel racing in this country?
Well, Scott's tested for Eddie, and Eddie was very interested in him, I believe, but right now the focus is still on Formula One. But if one of the kids doesn't make them or there's not an opportunity or a seat available in Formula One, then we might see him back here in the States.
Well, we'll see what happens in that program. When SportsCenter at the Indy 500 returns, it's your turn to ask Danny some questions. We'll take your emails when we come back to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
You are watching SportsCenter at the Indianapolis 500.
We welcome you back to SportsCenter at the Indy 500. 1985 champion Danny Sullivan has been gracious enough to join us from his home here in the south of France. And Danny, now it's time to let our viewers ask some questions from ESPN.com. Are you ready to take some tough ones?
Let's go.
Okay. Our first question here from Craig in New York. Who would you select as your 3 co-drivers if you had a car capable of an outright win at Le Mans?
Oh, my 3 co-drivers. That would be a very tough question. Let's see. Yannick Dalmas I like. I raced with him once before, and he's also in about 7 attempts won it 4 times, so I like his way of doing things. I'd like to see if I could drag Rick Mears back out because he's awful reliable. And the other driver, I go for a guy named Thomas Biaggi that I drove a Ferrari with last year, and we raced at Le Mans. Unfortunately, the car broke, but very good Italian.
Pretty stout team. Bobby from Washington, North Carolina, with 2 major series battling each other, how can open wheel racing survive the NASCAR juggernaut?
Well, I think that the NASCAR juggernaut is going to be tough to stop, but I think if open wheel racing is going to get back to somewhat of what it was before, there probably needs to be some kind of a unification, and they need to focus on the main markets here. We've got great open wheel racing, whether you're watching an IRL event, the Indianapolis 500, or a kart event. The open wheel racing is tremendous, but I don't think that the United States will take 2 divisions in open wheel split and compete against NASCAR.
All right, Chris from Dover, Delaware asked, do you have any interest in being involved with an IndyCar team today, and also does your son have an interest in racing?
My son has no interest in racing, which is a blessing. I think it's a very tough sport. But and in terms of being involved with a team, I've thought about it a lot, but I've never had the right opportunity where it worked.
You know, Danny Sullivan, 20 years ago this month, you pulled off something that IndyCar fans everywhere always remember, the spin and win in the Indianapolis 500. And Danny, it has been awfully nice to have you come back and relive some memories. And I think even you have to smile when you come back and walk in this place and see what happened 20 years ago this month.
Yeah, it's great to be back. You know, you realize when you come back how many friends, how much you miss it. It's really a very special place.
We are getting set for the 89th running of the Great American Race, the greatest spectacle in racing, the Indianapolis 500. So many memories over the years, and this guy right here gave us some memorable moments at this speedway. The most memorable, 20 years ago this May, the spin and win as Danny Sullivan won the 1985 Indianapolis 500. So long, everyone, from SportsCenter at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.